This is week 2 of the April cycle here on Mythological Africans. And as you may know, this month we're focused on the Magician Archetype as it shows up in African myth, folklore, legend, and history. We laid the groundwork last week by describing the archetype of the magician or the magical principle as conceived by the school of Jungian thought. In that context, the archetype of the magician or the magical principle refers to the collective human image and understanding of what it takes to embody change and transformation by defying convention, by turning away from the beaten track with its known destinations and heading into the unknown. This archetype recalls what it takes and means to act otherwise than humanity has always acted and counterbalance the dead weight of humanity's mass of convention and habit, and most importantly, actually find answers or new ways of being and doing things in these alternate paths. So simply put, the magician seeks out or imagines new ways of being and doing and actually embodies them. And so to illustrate that this week, in this episode of the podcast, we'll read a short story that captures this perfectly. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Mythological Africans podcast, where we read and talk about stories from African mythology and folklore. I am your host, Helen Tunde. Many miracles. A holy teacher of Islam wanted to leave his city and go for a while to another one. He met a man with a club. This man knew how to fight very well. The man asked to go with him. "If you wish, please do," the holy man replied. And so they walked along. Then they met a hunter. "I know how to shoot very well. Would you like me to accompany you?" the hunter asked. "If you like, please do," they replied. And so the hunter took his bow and arrow and they continued their journey. They came to a city, and in front of the city was a big river. It was the dry season though, so they didn't need a canoe, for they were able to wade across the river. They came into the city and lived there for a month. And then the holy teacher said that they had to leave so they could cross the river before the rainy season. But before they could cross the river, the first rains had fallen and the river was swollen to a flood. There was still no canoe, so the holy man asked them to wait for a day for the waters to subside. They waited and waited and waited and waited until they were so hungry because they had nothing to eat. And then the king of the city to which they were returning appeared on the other bank, as he had come to see the swollen river. He saw the holy teacher and called across to him, "Hello, Malam, what are you doing over there?" "We came early this morning to cross," the holy man replied, "but we couldn't. I don't believe that the river is going to subside soon, and we don't have any canoes." "Then we will have to try without a canoe," the Malam answered. He then took out his holy papers, laid them on the water, stepped on them, and then laid out more paper in front of him to step on. And as he went along, he picked up the paper behind him and put it in front of him and stepped on it, on and on until he reached the other bank safely. Neither man nor paper had a drop of water on them. When the hunter saw this, he was inspired. He followed the example of the Malam. He shot an arrow into the water, stepped on it, and then shot another arrow into the water, stepped on it, picked up the first arrow, shot it into the water, and stepped on it, on and on until he reached the other shore safely. Then the man with the club who could fight thought to himself, What these two can do, so can I. And so he struck the water with his club, and it immediately divided itself, and then he crossed the riverbed with dry feet. The water closed behind him. Then the three of them joined the train of the king on the other side. But along the way they passed an old woman, and the Malam asked if she had something for him to eat, since they had not eaten since morning. "I have nothing," the woman answered. "I heard the king was coming, but in my excitement I poured cold water into boiling water. Now I have shaken it all out until the mat, in order to separate the boiling water from the cold water once more." The men continued on their journey. Near the city, they met a man who was digging a well. "Don't you have some food to sell?" the Malam asked. "No," the man answered. "It's very hot here. It's so hot that I'm just getting ready to move my well to the shadows of that tree over there. And when the sun sets, I'll move it back again." Amazed by what they had witnessed, the men carried themselves home. So tell me now, who amongst all these people performed the most miraculous act? The Malam who crossed the river on his papers? The hunter who went across the river with his arrows? The fighter who struck the river with his club, divided it into two, and walked across the dry riverbed? The woman who separated boiling water from cold water? Or the man who could move his well under a tree and then back again? There are two reasons why I picked this story for this week. First, it's been a long week and I don't have the brain space for detailed analysis, so it's just a fun, lighthearted story. And also, it's not meant to be taken too seriously, but that's with a caveat. Stories like we heard today are known as dilemma tales. That is, they are intended to provoke debate. And in this case, the question asked at the end, who is the most miraculous, would prompt the people who listen to the story to pick a side and advance reasons for why they believe what they believe. In the past, conversations such as these help people make sense of the world around them, find reasons for why things might be the way they are, and expand their thinking so they could imagine possibilities that would not be the first that they thought about. And it might seem like a silly little exercise for a world where you can ask the nearest AI to explain advanced mathematical concepts in a way that a 5-year-old might understand and get exactly that. But it's worth remembering that alchemy, the progenitor of modern science as we know it, emerged from people trying to make sense of or find answers to questions and situations previously explainable only by magic. So my invitation to you this week is to embrace the playfulness of out-of-the-box thinking, and also keep in mind that out-of-the-box thinking is where magic lives. Thank you as always for listening, and I will see you next week.